Welcome back to my channel. Today we will learn about the most devastating storylines in CBS's The Bold and the Beautiful series. This is a turning point that changed the entire dynamics of the Forrester family forever, leaving behind a trail of guilt, betrayal, and irreversible consequences that would haunt the characters involved for years to come. The double life that started it all. Eric Forrester, the legendary patriarch of Forrester Creations, found himself caught in an impossible situation that would ultimately lead to his demise. By day, he played the role of a retired businessman, maintaining the facade of a man who had stepped back from the demanding world of fashion design. However, by night, Eric transformed into a shadow of himself, working in secret to complete an entire collection clothing line for Katie Logan. This clandestine operation was nothing short of exhausting, both physically and emotionally. The burden of living a double life weighed heavily on Eric's shoulders. He could simply not rest and enjoy his retirement years as Ridge, his son, believed him to be doing. Instead, Eric was burning the midnight oil, designing garments, overseeing details, and pouring his creative energy into a project that had remained completely hidden from the Forrester family. The secrecy surrounding this collection meant that Eric could not share his work with anyone at the company, could not take pride in his accomplishments publicly, and could not even discuss the project with his own family members. Every evening, as the sun set over Los Angeles, Eric would slip away from his comfortable retirement and venture into the night to continue his work. The stress of maintaining this dual existence was taking a severe toll on his aging body. He was no longer a young man in his prime, able to juggle multiple responsibilities with ease. The years of being at the helm of Forrester Creations had already taxed his physical health, and now his secret project was pushing him to his absolute limits. Katie, for her part, depended entirely on Eric's willingness to help her. She had entrusted him with her vision, her business ambitions, and her hopes for the future. She believed that Eric's legendary expertise and design prowess would be the key to launching a successful fashion line that could compete in high-stakes world of couture. What Katie may have not fully realized was just how much this collaboration was draining the man she was depending so heavily on. The night everything changed. One evening, during what was supposed to be a secret fitting session at Katie's residence, everything came to a sudden and catastrophic halt. Eric had arrived for yet another clandestine meeting to work on the collection, perhaps to make final adjustments, perfect the designs, or prepare the garments for their eventual reveal. The atmosphere was tense, as it was always during these secret meetings, because they all knew that if Ridge discovered what was happening, the consequences would be severe. During this particular fitting, Eric suddenly clutched his chest. His face contorted in pain as he began to collapse, his body giving way to what appeared to be a massive cardiac event. The moment was absolutely terrifying. Donna, who was present during the secret meeting, watched in horror as the man she cared about crumbled before her eyes. Her scream pierced through the house as a cry of anguish and fear that reflected the gravity of the situation unfolding before them. Eric lay on the ground struggling for breath, his body convulsing slightly as his heart failed him. The situation was dire, urgent, and demanded immediate medical intervention. Every second that passed without professional help was a second that Eric was slipping further away from them. The medical reality was stark and unforgiving. Without emergency medical care, Eric Forrester would likely not survive the night. The impossible choice. This moment of crisis forced Katie into one of the most devastating moral and practical dilemmas of her entire life. Standing there in her own home, watching a man she respected and depended on collapse before her eyes. Katie had to make an instantaneous decision that would carry enormous consequences either way. Option 1 was to immediately call emergency services. This was the logical, the moral, and the ethically correct choice. Paramedics would arrive, they would perform life-saving measures, and there was a genuine chance, however slim, that they could revive Eric and save his life. However, this option came with a catastrophic price. The moment the emergency services arrived at Katie's home, the entire secret would be exposed. Paramedics would see the collection designs, the samples, the evidence of this unauthorized project. They would ask questions. They would wonder why Eric Forrester, supposedly retired, was at Katie Logan's house in the middle of the night working on clothes. Within hours, the entire Forrester family would know about the secret project. Ridge would learn that his father had been secretly helping Katie launch a competing fashion line. He would discover that Eric had been living a secret life, deceiving his own family, all to assist someone outside the company. The scandal, the betrayal, the violation of family loyalty, it would be monumental. The business repercussions would be equally severe. Forrester Creations would face the awkward reality that their patriarch had been helping the competition. Family relationships would shatter under the weight of this revelation. Option 2 was to refuse to call for help to attempt to manage Eric's medical emergency on their own, or to delay seeking medical attention long enough to somehow cover their tracks. This option would preserve the secret at least temporarily. Katie's business ambitions would remain protected. The family drama would be avoided. But the cost of this choice was almost unthinkable: Eric's life. By choosing to protect the secret, Katie and Donna would be gambling with a human being's existence. They would be prioritizing a fashion collection, a business venture, above the actual life of another person. The moral bankruptcy of such a choice was staggering. Katie faced an impossible moral calculus: save the life of the man who had been helping her, but destroy her business plans and create a family catastrophe. Or preserve her business dreams and potentially allow a man to die in order to keep the secret. This was not a choice between two good options. This was a choice between two terrible outcomes, and whichever path Katie chose, the consequences would be severe and lasting. The tragic conclusion. In the end, despite the urgency, despite Donna's screams of terror, despite Katie's internal conflict, Eric Forrester's heart simply gave out. Whether help was called too late, or whether Eric's body had simply endured too much stress and strain from months of secret labor, the result was devastatingly final. Eric Forrester, the man who had built Forrester Creations from the ground up, who had mentored designers and shaped the fashion industry, who had survived countless personal crises and family dramas, died that night. The loss was not just a medical tragedy, but a human one. Eric had been a father, a mentor, a creative visionary, and a man who had sacrificed his retirement peace to help someone he believed in. His death marked the end of an era for the Forrester family and for everyone who had known him. The aftermath and unbearable guilt. The days and weeks following Eric's death were consumed by grief, but that grief was complicated and twisted by guilt. Katie and Donna both carried the weight of knowing their own decisions, their own choices, had contributed to the circumstances that led to Eric's collapse. They replayed the events over and over in their minds, wondering if they had done things differently, if they had not demanded so much of Eric. If they had been more careful about protecting his health, perhaps he would still be alive. Katie was tormented by the knowledge that she had asked Eric to work night after night on this collection. She had counted on him, depended on him, accepted his help without fully acknowledging the physical toll it was taking on him. Every time she looked at the collection they had been working on together, she saw not a triumph of fashion design, but a reminder of the price that had been paid for her ambitions. Donna's guilt was equally profound. She had witnessed Eric's collapse firsthand. She had screamed for help, had seen the man she cared about suffer. And now she carried the knowledge that they had been engaged in a secret project that had contributed to his death. The memory of Eric's face in that moment of pain would haunt her for years to come. Ridge's blame and family rupture. However, in the aftermath of Eric's death, Katie would discover that her guilt and Donna's remorse would not be enough to shield her from the family's wrath. Ridge Forrester, grieving the loss of his father and desperate to assign blame for his death, decided to hold Katie responsible for what had happened. In Ridge's mind, the narrative was clear: Katie had exploited Eric. She had asked him to work in secret, she had pushed him beyond his limits, she had forced him to live a double life, and her ambitions had literally killed him. Ridge's accusations were not entirely without merit, but they also represented a selective interpretation of events. Eric had made his own choices. He had agreed to help Katie. He could have refused at any point, but he had not. He had continued working because he believed in the project and because he wanted to help. However, this nuance was lost in Ridge's grief and anger. He needed someone to blame, and Katie was an easy target, especially given her status as an outsider to the Forrester family. The accusation that Katie was responsible for Eric's death became the narrative that dominated the family's response to the tragedy. Other family members picked up on Ridge's blame and added their own accusations. Katie went from being a woman wrestling with her own guilt to being publicly condemned by the Forrester family as the woman who had killed Eric. Forrester. The emotional and social consequences of this public blame were severe and long-lasting. The broader implications for Forrester Creations. Eric's death also had massive implications for Forrester Creations itself. The company lost not just an employee, or even just a former CEO, but its visionary founder. Eric had been the soul of the company, the creative force that had defined its identity. His death left a void that could not be easily filled. The company would face questions about its future direction, about its creative leadership, and about its ability to compete in a rapidly changing fashion industry. The secret project with Katie also became a source of ongoing scandal within the company. Even after Eric's death was revealed to be the central tragedy, the question of what he had been doing, why he had been helping Katie, and what it meant for Forrester's business relationships continued to generate tension and drama within the company walls. The employees and executives at Forrester Creations began to question the loyalty of their colleagues and the commitment of the company's leadership to the company itself. A legacy of consequences. The storyline of Eric's secret work, his collapse, and his subsequent death represented a turning point in the series that demonstrated how personal ambitions, family secrets, and the pressure to succeed in the competitive fashion industry could have fatal consequences. It was a tragic reminder that no business deal, no fashion collection, no personal ambition was worth the life of another human being. Eric Forrester's death rippled through the lives of everyone around him. It created lasting resentment between Katie and Ridge. It complicated Donna's grief with overwhelming guilt. It left the Forrester family fractured and struggling to move forward, and it raised difficult questions about the ethics of business, the importance of family loyalty, and the price of secrecy. In the end, Katie and Donna's regret could not bring Eric back. Ridge's blame could not explain away the complexity of what had happened. The fashion collection that had cost Eric his life would forever be tainted by the tragedy that had surrounded its creation. The Bold and the Beautiful had delivered one of its most emotionally complex and devastating storylines, a narrative that proved that sometimes the pursuit of success and the maintenance of secrets could lead to consequences far more terrible than any scandal or family conflict ever could. This is the tragic saga of Eric Forrester's final chapter, a story that reminds viewers why family honesty in human life must always take precedence over business ambitions